Hello and welcome to Good Morning India. I'm Ankita Mukherjee. Over the next 1 hour, the day's big stories, including all the latest from Sri Lanka, which has now seen some of its worst violence since the economic crisis began.
That's right. Good morning. I'm Priyanshi. Lots lined up ahead. As Ankita said, the violence in Sri Lanka, the centre's U-turn on sedition law and a lot more. First look at the headlines.
Hours after Mahinda steps down as Prime Minister, the Rajapaksa family home is set on fire. As Lanka sees some of its worst violence, a ruling party MP is killed, many others are injured.
And a question on sedition. Will the Supreme Court defer sedition hearing? The Prime Minister orders rethink on outdated colonial law. The centre told the Supreme Court, defer hearing, we will rethink the sedition law.
An attack on the Punjab Police's intelligence headquarters in Mohali. Policemen say a rocket-propelled grenade was behind the blast.
An AAP MLA booked for halting demolition drive in Shaheen Bagh. Delhi police files case against Amanatullah Khan.
Pulitzer Prizes for Danish Siddiqui and 3 others. Pulitzers are for images of India's COVID crisis. The Reuters photographer is posthumously awarded that prize along with Adnan Abidi, Sanay Irshad Mattu and Amit Dave. Siddiqui was killed last year while covering a clash between Afghan Special Forces and Taliban insurgents. The top story this morning, Sri Lanka placed under curfew as it sees some of the worst violence since the crisis began. Loyalists of Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa have gone on the rampage, clashing with anti-government supporters.
And a ruling party MP died and many were injured yesterday. Mr. Rajapaksa has resigned, leading to the collapse of the government in Sri Lanka.
A peaceful protest that turned violent. Supporters of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa clashed with protesters. Over 100 people were injured. Police used the water cannons to disperse the crowd, and a curfew was declared across the island nation. Minutes after Sri Lanka Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa resigned. This comes after nearly 2 months of protests. However, the protests did not end. Amarakirti Atukorala, an MP belonging to the ruling coalition party, was killed. Armed troops have been deployed in the capital Colombo on Monday. The island nation with 22 million people is in deep economic distress. There is a shortage of food, fuel and cooking gas. While a very few are fleeing the country, protests have rapidly spread across all communities against the Rajapaksas. Tense atmosphere prevails in Sri Lanka. Curfew has been imposed in the island nation. People are in deep distress. Over 2,000 unions have also withdrawn their services. There is shortage of food, shortage of fuel, and there's no milk for children. Amidst all of this, we see that Rajapaksa clan is buried in deep political crisis. Shrija for NDTV.
And Shrija joins us live this morning. Shrija, further details now available about Sri Lanka's death toll really going up. More people who were injured in those clashes now dead. What seems to be next for this very troubled nation that seems to be spiraling into one of its worst crises yet?
Well, what we do know at the moment from the ongoing scenario is that especially people are demanding the resignation of Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who is the president of Sri Lanka. And we understand the protests are clearly not weakening even as we speak. We also see that several of the people are continuing to protest. They're coming onto streets and demanding the resignation of Gotabaya Rajapaksa. What's more important over here is that we are also looking at visuals, various visuals that are surfacing. Several of the people have gathered at the old airport, which is the Colombo airport, to ensure that there are not many ministers or leaders who are fleeing the country, because they're also, what we are understanding from the ground here is that people are telling that they're trying to check each and every vehicle to find out if there are any leaders at all leaving the country from Colombo airport or not. So that is, of course, a very tense situation that we're witnessing in Sri Lanka is concerned. That apart, on one hand, of course, we are looking at the economic crisis. There is shortage of food, there is shortage of fuel, cooking gas. People continue to line up in long queues. On the other hand, we see that the people have all united. It's a uprising that we're witnessing. They've all come together. They're continuing to demand the resignation of Gotabaya Rajapaksa. So what we did, of course, witness late last night, just hours after especially the resignation of Mahinda Rajapaksa as the Prime Minister of the country, was one MP was killed in a shooting incident. However, there's again not really much information coming in from the Sri Lankan police as to what transpired. That apart, we understand people started going berserk. They went on a rampage. They started demolishing and destroying properties of especially belonging to the leaders and ministers. Several of the MPs have been injured as well. Their houses have been completely damaged and burned down. So these are some of the scenes that we had witnessed just about late last night. But at least about around 12 a.m. or something, we did, of course, went on to witness how people went on to, in fact, barge into the gates, through the gates of especially Mahinda Rajapaksa's residence, the Temple Trees, the official residence, and then police had to fire tear gas and also open fire to ensure they can disperse the crowd. So this was the measure that was adopted by the police. But clearly we see that there is no signs of weakening in terms of the protest. The people continue to say that they will continue their protest even as we speak. Even today they will continue the protest until the entire Rajapaksa's regime or the clan is completely, as far as the Sri Lankans are concerned, they say they want the entire clan to step down from the administration.
All right, Shrija, thanks very much indeed for joining us with those latest details. Meanwhile, a rocket-propelled grenade or RPG was fired from a street that shattered the glass at the Punjab Police's intelligence headquarters in Mohali. The police called it an RPG-like attack and termed the blast a minor one.
The police have cordoned off the area and an alert has been sounded. A team from the Forensic Science Laboratory is on the spot. A quick reaction team of the Chandigarh Police was also deputed near the Intelligence Office building. Let's now go across to Ghazali for more on this. Ghazali, what more details can you share with us on the investigation of the blast and the security arrangements this morning?
See, as per the sources, the police have confirmed that this was an RPG-like attack and two people were involved who came with their car and fired at the building from a distance, and the RPG landed on the third floor of the building at around 7:45 in the evening yesterday, which also damaged the wall and the window panes. So yesterday, the government sources were quick to dub it as a minor explosion or it was not a terror attack. This was the statement which was issued from the government sources. But the police have confirmed that two people were involved who came, fired RPG on the intelligence building and fled. Now, police is also working on many other leads because in the last 1 month, if we see, police have arrested many people, have recovered arms and ammunition, cache of arms and ammunition, not only from Punjab, but some joint operation with Haryana police also led to the arrest of suspected militants as well. So now police is trying to find out that who could be behind the blast, because as of now, they are not either confirming or denying the involvement of a terror group behind this attack.
All right, Ghazali, thank you for joining us with those details. Let's listen in to what the police had to say about the incident.
एक ब्लास्ट हुआ है, माइनर ब्लास्ट है और बिल्डिंग जो इंटेलिजेंस वाली है उसके ऊपर किया गया है बाहर से, और कोई भी जानी नुकसान नहीं हुआ है। बाकी तफ्तीश चल रही है। सारे हमारे सीनियर अफसर यहीं मौके पर हैं और तफ्तीश जारी है। केस रजिस्टर की यार एक माइनर ब्लास्ट होया है, रॉकेट टाइप फायर नाल होया हैगा।
In other news, hours after the demolition drive in Delhi's Shaheen Bagh was disrupted, the Delhi police has now lodged an FIR against the Aam Aadmi Party's MLA, Amanatullah Khan, and his supporters for allegedly halting the MCD-led drive. The FIR includes obstructing public servants in their discharge of functions and assaulting a public servant. It's been registered on the complaint of the South Delhi civic body.
Meanwhile, the Bharatiya Janata Party has also asked the South Delhi Municipal Corporation or the SDMC Commissioner to take action against political leaders from the Aam Aadmi Party and the Congress who disrupted the demolition drive at Shaheen Bagh yesterday.
The bulldozer, seen as a symbol of the BJP administration's tough action against rioters and criminals, reached Shaheen Bagh on Monday morning, the hotspot of the anti-CAA protest, as part of the South Delhi Municipal Corporation's anti-encroachment drive. The only thing removed, that too by the residents themselves, was the scaffolding set up to paint a building. With no unauthorized structures to raise and the residents out on the streets against the drive, the bulldozer, along with the civic authorities, left the area within minutes.
यहाँ इंक्रोचमेंट था ही नहीं, एक पेड़ बंधी हुई थी, इसको ये कहने लगे साहब वो बुलडोजर वहां जाकर खड़ा कर दिया। मुझे मालूम था ये खबरें दिखाएंगे कि हमने देखो अतिक्रमण हटा दिया, तो मैंने खुद कहा इसे हटा दो। बुलडोजर लगाने के पीछे हिंदू मुसलमान कैसे करें कि शाहीन बाग में कार्रवाई रोक दी। अमानतुल्लाह के नाम पर इनको वोट मांगना है हिंदू भाइयों का, अमानतुल्लाह ने आकर रोक दिया। देखो वो गुंडा है, देखो वो जिहादी है, ये कैसे करेंगे।
वहाँ के जो विधायक हैं वो खुद अतिक्रमण करवा रहे हैं और उसके बाद जाकर के वहाँ पे सरकारी काम में बाधा डालने का काम कर रहे हैं। उनके ऊपर FIR करानी चाहिए डिपार्टमेंट को।
However, the Supreme Court had strong words for the CPM, which quickly went to court against the bulldozer action. The court refused the CPM's request for a stay on the demolitions. We are there to protect livelihoods, but not like this, the judges added. A furious court told the CPM, either you withdraw or we dismiss your plea. The court said, you do not even go to the High Court. You come straight to the Supreme Court. What is this? A political party coming here and telling us what to do. With Aravind Gunashekhar and Saurabh Shukla, Bureau Report, NDTV.
Suppressing voices against the RSS, subjugating opinion against the Modi government.
While it is still unclear what form this new law will take, the PM's intervention came a day before the Supreme Court's final hearing in this matter, where a 3-judge bench led by CJI N.V. Ramana will decide whether the matter should be referred to a larger constitutional bench or not. In New Delhi with Neeta Sharma and camera person Pawan Kumar, this is Sukirti Dwivedi for NDTV.
The other big headline, the rupee sliding to an all-time low of 77.44 against the US dollar on Monday.
For consumers, a weaker rupee means high costs of everything imported from food to fuel and more expensive foreign travel. And on manufacturers, on the other side, it means increased prices of component parts, among other consequences. The rupee weakened to an all-time low today of 77 rupees and 46 paise to a dollar. The Indian currency has depreciated almost 5% in just the last 6 months, as it stood around 74 rupees per dollar in November last year. There are several connected reasons behind the slump. A combination of low foreign funds in India with a rising requirement is pushing the rupee down. Indian markets have witnessed the highest ever recorded foreign fund pullout this year, with $17.7 billion being withdrawn in just a little over 4 months. Foreign investors have remained net sellers in Indian markets and have withdrawn money for each of the last 7 months. The war in Ukraine continuing for the third month, lockdowns in China followed by soaring inflation and rate hikes across countries are all factors pushing investors back to safe investing destinations such as the United States. An uncertain environment has turned investors to the US dollar that is considered a reserve and a safe currency in times of global stress. A soaring demand has taken the dollar to a 2-decade high, further pressurizing the rupee's value. And lastly, a 15% increase in the price of Brent crude prices has further resulted in foreign currency outflows in terms of import payments.
If this remains for the rest of the year, we can intuitively see that the overall cost of imported oil would go up by around 4.5 billion rupees. So there's a direct relationship between exchange rate and our overall import bill in rupee terms.
Apart from impacting markets, the rupee's depreciation drives up the cost of living, affecting the prices of essentials for the common man. When the rupee depreciates, everything we import gets more expensive. As for $1 worth of products, we now have to pay more in rupees. Already soaring crude oil prices will now translate into even larger payments in rupee terms. And increasing oil import prices further translate into higher domestic fuel prices, which have a cascading impact on overall inflation. A higher cost of transportation in turn pushes up the prices of all essential products. Along with this, the cost of foreign studies and foreign travel also increases with the rupee's worth reducing. But there's an upside too. Indian exports now get more competitive as foreign importers now have to pay less in terms of their currency. The Congress hit out at the Prime Minister digging up his old tweets and videos before he became the PM and had then said that the weakening rupee was in ICU. With no signs of global supply disruptions easing amid the war, the pressure on the rupee is expected to continue. This will hurt the common man who is already struggling with price rises across commodities. Priyanshi Sharma for NDTV.
Coming up, a quick break, but we'll also have all the latest details on the path of Cyclone Asani.
Cyclone has weakened with rainfall predicted in 3 states. All the details coming up. Welcome back. Severe cyclonic storm Asani is centered over West Central Bay of Bengal and is expected to weaken over today and tomorrow. The storm is inching closer to Andhra Pradesh coast, but landfall is unlikely.
So rainfall is expected in Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, also West Bengal. Chennai has already seen some rains, but the path of the cyclone is expected to curve at this point and not actually make landfall anywhere on the Indian subcontinent. But let's try and go across, if we can, to AVM GP Sharma, who retired, President Met and Climate Change of SkyMet Weather. Thank you very much indeed for speaking with NDTV. What can you tell us at this point about the path of Cyclone Asani and what it's going to mean for the eastern coastal states?
Thank you, Ankita. Path of the cyclone, you see, last, I will say about 12 hours or so, 3 things have happened. The storm has slowed down. Earlier, it was moving yesterday with a speed of almost about 25 km per hour. It has dropped now, I will say, to just about 10 to 12 km per hour. Also, it seems to be a little weakened now as compared to what we had earlier. It should be, what I see is, earlier I saw the sharp outlines of the storm, which indicates its intensity that's becoming a little red. And the texture was very fine, also it's a little losing. So these are the signs that possibly it's losing its steam or so. Notwithstanding all this, it continues to be a cyclonic storm with winds to the tune of even 80-90 km per hour in gust, possibly exceeding that. So there is no question of lowering any guard, notwithstanding, as I said, that storm possibly has weakened a little. But then, the track of the storm, it will continue moving, those albeit slowly, northwest, It should come close to the South Andhra Pradesh coast. I will say the closest position, I feel it's somewhere close to Kakinada it will come. Right. Kakinada and Tuni, that is the closest position. You mentioned something about the landfall. Yesterday also when I was on your channel, I said it is going to come dangerously close to the coastline. Okay. And it is so. It may appear as such, even in the satellite imageries and all, that it's going to make a landfall. It's very difficult to distinguish at that point of time. Okay, but landfall, generally we say it is complete when the whole system crosses the coast and it moves inland. That's the landfall complete. Right. It may not happen that, but definitely I feel it is, again, I repeat, dangerously close to the coastline, and it should be closer to the place between, I say, Tuni and Kakinada, south of Visakhapatnam. Yes.
So tell us a little more, sir, then, in terms of the kind of precautions that people along the coastlines should take in these three states, Andhra Pradesh, Odisha and West Bengal, should these be similar to any other sort of really sort of big cyclone that we've seen in the past? Should there be sort of broad scale evacuations? Should there just be care? What kind of alerts are being sounded at this point?
Ankita, we saw, yes, super cyclone in 2020. Memories are still very sharp. And last year we saw Yas, very severe cyclonic storm, which bashed Orissa, but nothing of that sort. Okay, it is much, even 1 grade lower intensity means a lot in terms of its damaging potential. It is going to be a cyclonic storm, the initial cat of the storm, which we call it as. Okay, earlier, yes, it was intensified to category 1 equivalent hurricane, but it has dropped. It has dropped its strength now. It is going to be 80-90 kilometer winds will be there over the coastal parts. Right. By evening or tonight, I feel it's going to further move closer, and then the coastal parts of Andhra Pradesh will start experiencing weather. The damaging potential of the storm lies not only in the rains, it is a combination of strong winds and rains. Winds will also be strong. As far as south coastal Andhra Pradesh is concerned, I feel there is no question of lowering any guard, which we had picked up earlier for the management, the disaster management agencies. Right. They should continue to be there. Yes. As I said, it may not be that furious which we saw earlier, but then there is a need to exercise full caution over these parts, starting with south coastal Andhra Pradesh, starting with Machilipatnam, Tuni, Narsapur, Kakinada, and even going up to Vizag, because you see, this storm is going to languish over that area. It is going to nearly crawl from evening onward, spending a lot of time in the proximity of the coast. The longer it stays, obviously, the more is the duration of inclement weather conditions. Right. So all that will happen. But then the other states, other two states, Ankita, you mentioned about Orissa and particularly Bengal. I think storm will recurve after about 24 hours. It will move more of a northeastward, increasing its margin from the coastline. It will be a weakened system. I think West Bengal will be at a safe distance from this, and there is no question of any worry. But rains, yes, because the storm covers almost about 500-600 kilometer peripheral areas also, but they will not be damaging rains for West Bengal.
All right.
Yes, Ankita.
Mr. Sharma, thank you very much for that very detailed and very clear explanation of what we are likely to expect in the next couple of days or so. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on Good Morning India.
Welcome back. An important headline today. The rupee is now off its all-time low, and it has recovered almost 20 paise this morning. Remember, yesterday the rupee hit an all-time low of 77.5 rupees per dollar, and it closed around 77.46 rupees per dollar. Rupee had in fact weakened by close to 60 paise yesterday to hit its all-time low. And if we give you a larger picture, the rupee has depreciated almost 4% over the last 6 months. Now, why is this happening now? Foreign funds outflows are stressing the rupee. There were a record $17.7 billion of foreign funds that were pulled out this year just till the month of April, and that's the highest witnessed in any year on record. Investors are now shifting to safer assets amid uncertainty on global markets due to the Ukraine war, due to inflation and rising interest rates across economies. With this, investors are pulling out funds from emerging and developing economies like India and taking it to safer assets like the United States. Along with this, the demand for foreign currencies also going up, with the Brent crude prices going up. We also have a guest joining us on this topic to make sense of the rupee journey till now and to explain the impact that it could have on the common people. Raj Nair joining us on the show. He's an expert on global economic issues and the chairman of Avalon Consulting member, and he's also the president of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Sir, welcome to the show. So my first question is that we've been looking at foreign outflows as a major reason for the rupee falling down amid uncertainty. So are external reasons all that are to be blamed, or could the government have done something to prevent this slump?
See, you explained the situation very well at the outset. But I'd like to say that there are external reasons and internal reasons, and currently it's more the external reasons which are at play than the internal reasons. Many listeners might remember that exactly on this date, 10 years ago, that is May 10, 2012, India was faced with the same situation where all currencies were receding against the dollar. And as you mentioned, we have a 4% loss since the beginning of this year in the value of the rupee. So-called stronger currencies like the yen, the yuan, the euro, the pound have lost much more. For instance, they're in the region of 8 to 11% loss as against our 4%. But that's very little solace. As you rightly said, the demand for dollars has gone up because the interest rates have gone up. Dollars are safe haven currency. It's the reserve currency under which most trades happen. Right. So people need dollars. If the dollars move out of the emerging markets or even the strong markets, developed markets, to USA, there's a sudden increase in demand for dollars. And that simple economics suggests that the dollar price goes up. That's really the cause, but there are other internal causes too, which you referred to. But I can answer that if you think you need clarification on that too.
Right. So as you mentioned, the dollar's demand picking up, and it is in fact hit a 2-decade high. So that's also stressing the rupee, but also the impact on the common man. How does the rupee slumping to an all-time low impacting the common man? How can it impact our import bills, and what will be the further translation into overall inflation in the country? Will it be exaggerated even more as it's already above the RBI's threshold?
Yeah. So, inflation is in some sense driving this current account deficit, which is also driving the value of the rupee. Oil prices have gone up. All commodity prices have gone up. Our current account deficit has gone up. So we need dollars. So, but the immediate impact is that a lot of imports will become expensive. So whether it's automobile or any electronic product, where we buy chips, edible oil, all these are going to go up. And for the common man, edible oil is the most important thing. In our food mix, most of the things are domestic, except some pulses and edible oil. So that's going to hurt. As it is, the edible oil prices have gone up beyond the reach of the lower middle class. So this is going to be a bit of a problem. But everything is not bleak. There are certain things the government of India can do and certain things the Reserve Bank can do. If you look at what the Reserve Bank did 10 years ago, on May 10th, they said, okay, now overnight positions of all exporters our banks have to be brought down to zero. They said you can't have dollars, then you have to use up all your current dollars in your accounts before you buy dollars. If you export, bring the money back immediately. And there were a raft of things done. But we have to remember that these are things which the government can do. And there are certain things that RBI is very clear. For the last 2 or 3 decades, it's been maintaining its policy that it is not trying to increase the value of the rupee or decrease the value of the rupee. It's still going to reduce the fluctuations. So it'll just smoothen the glide path, whether it's upwards or downwards. It's not going to try and say, okay, now it's 77, we've got to bring it to 74. That's not been RBI policy for the past 30 years.
It's 9:30. You're with Good Morning India. Our big focus: demolitions once again in Delhi, a day after the Shaheen Bagh standoff, after facing resistance by locals against the anti-encroachment drive in Shaheen Bagh. The MCD is continuing with its plans to remove encroachments around South Delhi. Today, it's going to be based in South Delhi's New Friends Colony. Now, Akshay joining us with the latest on those details. Akshay, what are we hearing?
Well, Ankita, if we are talking about the plans of the South Delhi Municipal Corporation, it is going to continue with the anti-encroachment plan that it had laid out about a week back. And after the setback yesterday that the MCD received in the Shaheen Bagh area, where the locals themselves came to remove the encroachments, especially when we talk about encroachment in the Shaheen Bagh area, in the name of encroachment, there was only one building that the MCD could find, and there as well only painting work was going on, and the encroachment that the MCD was speaking about were just pillars that were used to in fact paint that particular building. And the local MLA along with the locals, they themselves came to remove those encroachments, and the MLA said that all the encroachments that were there in the market area, he already had removed those encroachments after talking to the Market Association of Shaheen Bagh. So that was a major setback as far as the optics of the MCD is concerned, that in fact planned to carry on with an anti-encroachment drive in the Shaheen Bagh area. But today, the focus has shifted from Shaheen Bagh to other areas of the national capital, especially in the New Friends Colony area, where the MCD in fact will be starting at around 11 a.m. another anti-encroachment drive to remove temporary shelters as well as temporary shops that people had built near the road, in fact who were encroaching on the road, is what the MCD is saying. And they had written to the police asking for adequate security. The police has said that they will be providing personnel as far as the anti-encroachment drive is concerned. But let's talk about the further plan of the MCD. So today, the anti-encroachment drive is going to take place in the New Friends Colony. Tomorrow, it will take at the Lodhi Road. Day after tomorrow, it will be at the Amar Colony area of the South Delhi. And then again in the Kalindi Kunj area on 13th of May. Now, let's remember that the last time police, MCD in fact tried to remove encroachments near the Kalindi Kunj area, police did not provide adequate security, and the MCD had to in fact abandon its plan. And till 9th, which means till yesterday, the police had not provided security, so no plans of the anti-encroachment drive could be taken by the MCD. But yesterday there were security provided by the police, but because of the intervention of local MLA as well as the locals who themselves came forward to remove the encroachment, the MCD could not carry on with the planned drive. Now the question that still remains is that whether a similar kind of action will be seen today, and whether the locals themselves will come in the New Friends Colony area along with the other areas like Amar Colony and Lodhi Road to remove the encroachments that are there, and whether the MCD will in fact bulldoze the area that are not removed despite the resistance that we saw yesterday.
Akshay, thanks so much for joining us. We'll of course come back to you once that actually rolls out at 11 o'clock. In other news, 2 days after firmly defending the country's colonial-era sedition law and asking the Supreme Court to dismiss the pleas that have challenged it, the government did an about-face on Monday, saying it has decided to review the legislation. Government sources say the move came based on instructions from Prime Minister Modi. The Trinamool's Mahua Moitra, who's one of the petitioners in the case, says the government's sudden move to decide on a review is just a ploy to buy time.
Must be at the heart of
a major political surprise from the government. In its affidavit to the Supreme Court, the centre did a complete U-turn on its stand on the sedition law, which it supported just last Saturday, crediting the change of heart to the Prime Minister, saying, "The Prime Minister has expressed clear and unequivocal views in favour of protection of civil rights, respect for human rights, and believes that outdated colonial laws have no place in India, which is celebrating the 75th year of independence."
Over the last 7.5, 8 years, Narendra Modi's government has worked to remove over 1,500 archaic laws. When the government puts out its view in such a positive manner, it means it obviously wants to study it either by the executive route or the legislative route, rather than see it being examined by the judicial route in terms of a conflict between two sides. So one should view it as a positive development.
Ironically, the government's own figures show BJP-ruled states are the worst offenders in using this British-era law. Other states like Maharashtra have been quick to follow, where sedition charges were used against MP Navneet Rana and her husband for chanting the Hanuman Chalisa outside the Chief Minister's house. And in the majority of cases, sedition charges have been used against journalists and human rights activists like the late Father Stan Swami, Sudha Bhardwaj and many others in the Bhima Koregaon case, as well as student activists. While convictions are low, the accused are spending years in jail.
Modi government's understanding of the sedition law has always been warped. Modi government has over last 8 years used the sedition law only to suppress fundamental rights of expression of opinion, curbing dissent against the BJP, suppressing voices against the RSS, subjugating opinion against the Modi government.
While it is still unclear what form this new law will take, the PM's intervention came a day before the Supreme Court's final hearing in this matter, where a 3-judge bench led by CJI N.V. Ramana will decide whether the matter should be referred to a larger constitutional bench or not. In New Delhi with Neeta Sharma and camera person Pawan Kumar, this is Sukirti Dwivedi for NDTV.
Sri Lanka has seen its most violent day in recent weeks as Prime Minister Rajapaksa quit from his post on Monday, and clashes left at least 5 people dead and over 100 injured. Sri Lanka MP Amarakirti Athukurala of the ruling party shot dead a 27-year-old man and then took his own life as per reports. Calls for President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to step down are now growing even stronger. A nationwide curfew is in place until Wednesday. The army has been deployed in the streets of Colombo as well. Well, joining us on Good Morning India now is Shanakyan Rasamanikam. He's an opposition MP in Sri Lanka, part of the Tamil National Alliance. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Rasamanikam, for speaking with NDTV at this difficult time for your country. Can you give us a sense of exactly how things are in the capital, Colombo, this morning, a day after those horrendously violent clashes? Also, just why did clashes turn so violent, in your opinion?
Thank you for having me. In fact, President Gotabaya Rajapaksa declared a state of emergency in the country last Friday, just hours after Parliament was adjourned for 10 days. And we found it very suspicious that the President declared a state of emergency at the time. And we did even, some of the MPs did even say that we could see violence happen in the next few days with the state of emergency declared. And Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, who was supposedly to resign on Monday, had called for an urgent meeting at Temple Trees, which is in the heart of the capital city, very close to where the protesting sites were, and had brought in a number of supporters from all over the country on buses to his official residence. Just before his resignation, very fiery speeches were made by pro-Rajapaksa former ministers, instigating violence against the peaceful protesters. These peaceful protests have been happening for over 30 days now, and not a single instance of violence was reported.
Right.
And with all these hateful speech that was, in fact, former Minister Johnston Fernando's speech clearly said that the peaceful protesters may not remain for too long. And within minutes, we saw these goons were unleashed on peaceful protesters who were unarmed, who were civilians, who were young people, who were women. Women were assaulted as well by these groups, and the police merely just watched. We saw very limited amount of police force was used, and in fact, in the news this morning, we can see that the secretary for the Ministry of Security, retired Major General from the army, again a loyalist of Rajapaksa, had informed the police to use minimum force to disperse the pro-Rajapaksa supporters. So they unleashed violence on a number of citizens. And naturally, peaceful protesters, naturally citizens of this country stood up against it. And we saw a very ugly turn of events. So this was all instigated by the Rajapaksas. They are to be held responsible
right. So,
for the
Mr.
lives
Rasamanikam,
lost.
you're saying protests that have been largely peaceful so far have tipped over only because of Mr. Rajapaksa's supporters and what they unleashed yesterday. What can you tell us about the Sri Lankan MP of the ruling party who apparently sort of fired on on one protester, and then was he responsible for taking his own life as well? What more do we know about that?
Well, precisely correct. That people are asking for the arrest of Rajapaksa for instigating this violence because they were just peaceful protesters, and these protesters went and attacked them, and naturally they had to retaliate. And now things are looking very blurry and very suspicious because media personnel are being asked not to cover most of the events that are happening. The country is in a state of emergency, so we see very little of what's going on outside other than what's on TV. And even with the MP, member of parliament who was killed, we are yet to really understand exactly how he was killed. There are various reports of how he got killed, but there is no official report from the police yet. So there's only speculation about how he was killed. And also, due to power cuts, right now, I'm sitting outside my house using my mobile phone to speak to you because I'm facing a power cut at my house and we don't know what time power will come back at. So all the networks
Mr.
are there.
Rasamanikam, may I also ask you at this point, the hope was that with Mahinda Rajapaksa stepping down as Prime Minister, there could be some end to this political impasse, that the opposition would somehow come on board and perhaps there could be some stability restored. Is that likely to happen given what we've just seen, or has that just been pushed back entirely?
No, that doesn't. Prime Minister Rajapaksa resigning does not change anything in the country at all, because the request has been, the demand has been that President Gotabaya Rajapaksa resigns, along with him, to take his entire family out of the cabinet and the ruling government. However, so this is just an eyewash that the president is trying to fool the public by saying that the brother has resigned. But Sri Lanka, which is governed by the executive and the legislature, and with President Gotabaya Rajapaksa coming into power, he strengthened himself by weakening parliament. So right now, parliament has very little authority over country's governance, whereas the president has most of the power. So I think the demands will increase now. There'll be louder demands, and there'll be more people demanding that President Rajapaksa not only resigns, but that the entire family is arrested, especially and held accountable for all the heinous crimes that they've committed over the last 2 decades. And I think yesterday's was the tip of the iceberg for them. And I think they cannot go scot-free this time. People will not allow that. And the urgent request that we give in front of the people is to stay calm and not resort to violence, because we cannot resolve this through violence. We need to stay calm. It's very hard to stay calm when the state unleashes its terrorism on citizens, and citizens are expected to stay calm. But that's the only way forward. I think it will intensify. The calls for President Rajapaksa to resign and for him to be arrested will intensify over the next couple of days. And if no positive action is taken, and people will be pushed. I think, people were pushed into this place.
Mr. Rasamanikam, one final question really. You're saying that the violence in effect has been entirely from the Rajapaksa supporters, and that's what has tipped things over. But clearly there's been some retaliatory violence also, including the attack on the Rajapaksa family home, which was set on fire. We're seeing those visuals right now.
Well, the instigators of this violence, when the state unleashes terrorism on its own citizens, naturally the citizens will resort to retaliate. And I think all these houses being burnt, it's very suspicious, because over 17 houses have been burnt, and all the houses have been evacuated. There have been nobody in these houses when they were burnt. No security given to these houses. So this is, and a certain group of MPs' houses have been burnt. And well, there are 100 or more government MPs. Why have they been spared then? So this all looks very, very suspicious. And with a state of emergency declared and curfew in place, we are wondering if this is the step towards going into martial law. If President can't rule the country anymore through democratic means, maybe this is a way to, maybe this is all staged by the government itself. We are yet to find out.
All right, that's a very serious allegation you're making, Mr. Rasamanikam. It'll be interesting to see how things progress. For the moment, though, thank you very much for speaking with NDTV, and we certainly hope the violence eases and more stable times are restored to your country. Shanakian Rasamanikam of the Tamil National Alliance speaking with NDTV this morning.
Pulitzer Prize 2022 winners in journalism, books, drama and music were announced on Monday. The winners list included Indians Adnan Abidi, Sana Irshad, Amit Dave and the late Danish Siddiqui of Reuters in journalism.
Reuters photographer Danish Siddiqui, of course, was posthumously awarded that prize. Now, this is all for images of COVID's toll on India. Siddiqui, remember, was killed last year while covering a clash between Afghan special forces and Taliban insurgents in Afghanistan.